Morning, everyone. Welcome back to another Chatting with Wisdom. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Gido Migwin Kwe, which means talking feather woman. And my earth name is Rollie Allaire, and I'm your host of Chatting with Wisdom. So Chatting with Wisdom is a weekly interview series featuring amazing women. There are different ways that women are amazing, and we're going to celebrate that. And I invite you to join me in my private Facebook group, Mind, Body, Heart, and Soul Connection. And you can also find a similar group on Telegram that I have been using this year to say share positivity. Apparently, my tongue is tied this morning. So today, I would like to welcome Madison Madden. She is a practitioner of Ayurvedic Medicine, sustainability educator, and expert yoga and somatic practitioner. She is the author of Mind, Body, Food, Redefining Your Relationship with Food, Having Overcome a Transformation. Oh my goodness. Apparently I cannot read today. Let's try if I put it over here. Um, now I lost my spot. So, having overcome a transformative battle with her own health starting as a child, Madison's story and gained expertise is deeply inspired and hauntingly relevant to our times. She has a unique ability to bridge science and spirituality, health and environmentalism, and speaks to many of the most pressing conflicts in our modern day in a personable yet exalted fashion. So, Madison is an Ayurvedic doctor, member of the National Ayurvedic Medical Association, and is the founder of Live Wise, an Ayurvedic and integrative health organization. She is a climate reality leader with the Climate Reality Project and serves on the board of directors of the Texas Ayurvedic Professionals Association and Pacific Coast Community Acupuncture. What does self-love acceptance mean to you? Radical honesty and seeing your eyes through the eyes of compassion for oneself and one's desires and history. So, welcome. How are you?
I am well. How are you doing?
As you can tell from my reading ability, this is the reason why everything is as we go. So,
It's
so,
all good.
so tell me a little bit more about how you became an Ayurvedic doctor.
Well, I found Ayurveda through my own healing journey. I was very sick as a young person. The story goes that I had been playing in the grass that had been sprayed with pesticides when I was about 2 years old in a park. And I got very sick from it and treated really heavily with antibiotics and steroids. And that wiped out my gut flora and my immune system. And then I was sick with all sorts of seemingly unrelated issues that nobody really knew what to do with. And I just got sicker and sicker as I grew up. And by the time I was in college, I was in chronic pain, working with the disability service, was on about 9 different pharmaceutical medications, had all sorts of issues that, no doctor could really seem to help me with. And I genuinely felt like I was dying. I felt like I was not going to make it to live to be 30, that I would never have children. I didn't really need to think about a career because I just, was kind of on the spiral downward with my own health. And I had a wake up call one day. I got gifted a craniosacral session from my sister. And I had never done anything like that before. And I went to this session and I had a pretty profound experience. And afterwards, I left, and it was as if the world seemed to have more color to it. And I got home and I looked down at my pharmacopoeia of drugs that I was taking. And I just had kind of an aha moment where I had this voice in the back of my head that said, okay, Madison, it's time for you to take responsibility for your own health now. And so I had no idea what that meant at the time, like, what does that mean? Okay. All right. So the first thing I started to do was change my diet. I started to learn about food and started to read labels. And I was astounded by what I noticed in food. And it took me on this just wild ride of learning about food and nutrition. And that led me to learn about agriculture and farming. And that led me, down this whole path. And I tried to get doctors to help me wean off of the medications that I was on, and I wasn't very successful. So I did it myself. And eventually I weaned off of all the medications I was on. Some of them were very challenging. And within weeks of changing my diet, as a novice, I didn't even know what I was doing or if I was doing the right thing. I noticed my pain and inflammation go down. And so I knew I was on the right track. And so this journey led me to yoga because I had a desire to integrate the mind, the body, and the soul, the spirit of this journey. And yoga eventually, my desire to follow a yogic path eventually led me to a teacher, to a yogi that I spent about 10 years studying very closely with. And he was the one who introduced me to Ayurveda. And I'd never heard the word Ayurveda before, but when he said, well, he asked me the first time he met me, he said, "Who are you?" Of course, that's a trick question. And I go into this whole spiel of my background and my upbringing and all this stuff. And but eventually I said something along the lines of, well, I know I'm a healer, but I know that I need to heal myself first. And, I had this interesting gift that I knew I had as a young person. By the time I was like 5 or 6 years old, I used to line up my whole family and give them treatments at family reunions. I had this kind of gift in my hands. I knew how to touch people and make them feel better. And but I had lost touch with that over the years, trying to kind of fit myself into the mold of, Western school and career and college and all of those things. And so I noticed that as I started to go through this healing process of healing my mind and my body, that I also seemed to start inviting parts of myself back in that I knew earlier in my life. And so I started to recognize that I had this, desire and this gift for healing, but I knew I had to heal myself first. And so he said, well, have you ever heard of Ayurveda? And I said, no. He said, well, read about it, look it up. So I did. And it was interesting. It was as if I had, it was a language that I knew, but I had never learned before. And it really expressed the essence of what I had at least started to dip my toes into, an approach of medicine that honors and utilizes the mind, the body, the soul, and the environment as one. And so I began to study Ayurveda, and the combination of yoga and Ayurveda helped me reverse these deep-seated health issues that I had that I couldn't quite get to on my own just through my novice nutrition, research on the internet and things like that. And so over the course of the years that I studied Ayurveda, I reversed all of the issues that I had. And it was such an empowering and inspiring experience that I knew that it was what I was, here to give back.
That's beautiful. And I love the story. And there are so many people that can definitely benefit from just being able to hear that story and knowing that there's hope of like being able to change and not being stuck in that rut of like, oh, well, I can't do anything about it. I can't change. I've been like this all of my life kind of thing. Right. So, like in your case, it's been since the age of 2. And it's like most people would have just completely given up and said, yeah, this is just who I am, how I am, and what's going to happen. So for those who are listening and don't know what Ayurveda is, do you want to explain a little bit about what that is?
Sure. Ayurveda is a system of healthcare that has roots in ancient India. And it's actually the oldest system of medicine that has been continually practiced in the world today. It's Similar in essence to Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine is more well known in the United States than Ayurveda is. It has a lot of similar characteristics and many roots, the same primal roots. Actually, they both track back to Nepal. And so Ayurveda uses food, nutrition, herbology, body therapies, detoxification, yoga, meditation, pranayama, which is breath practice, and believes that all medicine is found in nature and that everything in nature is medicinal if used in the right way. And that also means that everything in nature is toxic if used in the wrong way. And so in Ayurveda, we look at finding the root cause of what's causing illness or dis-ease in the body or mind. And then we work on that root cause, and you work on the symptoms simultaneously, but we know that unless you work on the root cause, you pull out the root cause, then the dis-ease is not going to be fully addressed. So we do that through this kind of multidimensional holistic framework within Ayurveda.
Beautiful. And I didn't realize to the extent that Ayurveda, because I've only known a portion of it, where like you follow the seasons and you use yoga practice, like breathing practices and different things at different times of the year. But I didn't realize how integrated that Ayurveda is. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of surfaced in the United States or in the West through the practice of yoga. Yoga has been has come here first, and so Ayurveda has been introduced in little trickles through yoga. But Ayurveda actually in India is in many other parts of the world, actually, it is a recognized healthcare system. And so in India, you go through a doctorate program that is the same in length as, an allopathic medical program. And in other parts of the World Health Organization recognizes Ayurveda as a full, complete system of health. So here it's just kind of beginning to be understood.
So, and which means that in Canada, it's even less understood.
Right.
And who I've learned it through is a yoga practitioner. And so that's one of the things that she specializes in. And so that's how I've been introduced to it. So, so when you started going in depth about what it is and how it works, it was like, wow, this is fascinating. So, so I really love that. So you're in the US, and so did you train in India, or is there something in the US that you were able to train through?
Yeah, I trained mostly in the United States, and then I did internship in India. And I have several teachers and mentors in India that I actually have a mentor that I meet with weekly still these days. But I did the bulk of my kind of formal training in Los Angeles, actually, of all places. And Ayurveda is a growing system. There's a national organization, like you mentioned in my bio, and several state organizations and several schools throughout the country now, and more are popping up, every year. So it is, it's a growingly understood practice and a growingly needed one, in that I have a respect for every system of medicine that I have ever come to encounter. And I've encountered many through my healing journey, both as a patient and as a practitioner. And I really do think that each one is useful and necessary and can be used in very important and integrated ways. And Ayurveda is unique because for a couple reasons, but one, because it works with things on the root cause, there's an aspect of Ayurveda that I've never been able to find in another system of detoxification and rejuvenation. There's something in Ayurveda called panchakarma, which is a deep tissue detoxification therapy that is just profound. And I've also never found another system of medicine that is as rejuvenating. The treatments in Ayurveda are so restorative and rejuvenating. And in a time where everybody seems to be working at light speed and there's just such prevalent depletion widespread in our culture right now, that I really think the rejuvenative quality of Ayurveda and the ability to kind of help people transition to living a lifestyle that is more in line with nature, with their natural rhythms, and the reinforcement that the healer is within us. That yes, you learn all these tools, but ultimately it's your own wisdom that keeps you healthy and keeps you balanced. So yeah, it's a beautiful practice.
Beautiful. And I love that, because one of the things, as I shared before we came on, is that I had broken my leg. And one of the things is that, so normally I'm up with the sun and I go to bed when the sun's kind of downing, I'm not up late a lot. When it starts to get dark and I start to wind down and that kind of thing. But yet, because I listen to what it is that my body's telling me, is that I've been sleeping more. I sleep in past the sunlight coming up. And so now I have to wake up to alarms because there are things that I need to do at certain times. But typically I can just get up with the sun and follow that practice. And I don't have any curtains on my windows. And for that reason, because our body really truly needs, we need to listen to what it is that our body needs. And so there was one day that I'm just going to lay down just for a couple of minutes just to kind of refresh. And 3 hours later, I'm up from a nap, and it was just, my body just needed me to relax and rejuvenate. And I know that is part of the healing practice. And it's really important for my body to rejuvenate in order for those bones to heal. I was very fortunate that I didn't have to have surgery, which means that my body's working even harder to try and make sure that it rebuilds the bone and gets that strength back, and that kind of practice. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad that you are listening to that and honoring the restoration that's needed through that deep rest.
Yeah. So, and it really does make a difference when we don't listen to what it is that our bodies need. And so the topic of our conversation today is radical self-care and lifestyle medicine. And so can you tell me a little bit more about this radical self-care?
Yeah. I wrote a book last year called Mind, Body, Food. And really, I would say radical self-care is the common thread. The main theme of my book is learning how to care for yourself with a sense of radical self-care. And what I mean by that is I say radical honesty meets self-compassion, and self-responsibility is an incredible healing cocktail. And I really do mean that. And with every client I've ever worked with myself and everything, those three things are, to me, the prerequisites to real healing. And so what I mean by that is, radical honesty. That's a huge one right now that I would love people to really take a hold of and reflect on. By radical honesty, I mean, what is really true for me? What are my desires? What brings me joy? What boundaries do I really need to set? What do I want to spend my time doing? What tastes good? What digests well? Who do I want in my life? What are the things I need to work on? What can I own up to in life? That's what I mean by radical honesty. And the ways in which we don't do that we cover things based on societal norms, family expectations, trying to perform and look perfect, all the different things that we do to just suppress what's true for us, causes dis-ease in our bodies. And over time, that actually manifests into physical conditions. So healing cocktail, or healing ingredient number 1. Healing ingredient number 2, self-compassion radical honesty means self-compassion. So by self-compassion, I mean I can completely understand why I have made the decisions that I have made that have led me to where I am today. And they are okay. And I matter. And I have the power to shift the direction that I want to go.
And I love that statement, right? Because that is something that we often forget, is that I matter. And what is it that's important for me is important for me.
Yes, absolutely. And that put together with, I understand why I've made the decisions that I've made that have got me here today, even if they're painful and hard and I feel shame or guilt around them. There was a reason that I made the decisions that I made, or the things that happened to me, and I responded to them the way that I did. And that's okay. I knew what I knew at the time, and I did the best I could. And I have the power to learn from that now. And I matter. That's so important, right? So, healing ingredient number 2. And then healing ingredient number 3 is self-responsibility. And that's a big one, because sometimes I reflect on our modern healthcare system. And I really believe that one of the main things that's driving the dysfunction in our modern healthcare system, which we have incredible science that's backing our healthcare system and incredible technology, and yet it's the most expensive and least efficient healthcare system in the industrial world, at least in the United States is. So there's something majorly wrong with the way that we're addressing healthcare on a traditional basis right now. And I really think that one of the reasons that is because we are not willing to take responsibility for our own health. We push the can down the road and think that someone else is going to take care of it for us, that there's a magic pill that's going to take our pain away. There's a magic pill that's going to take our cholesterol away. There's a magic pill that's going to take our depression away. And not to say that those medications are not useful. I'm not saying that. But until we take responsibility for our health, our bodies, our mind, our life, then we're always putting our attention outside of us and giving some other authority, whether that be a doctor or a parent or a pill, power over us. And so our responsibility for what's happening inside and outside of our body and in our environment is essential. And so those three ingredients, radical self-honesty, self-compassion, and self-responsibility, to me are what I mean by radical self-care.
And those are things that are so important. And I love how you pointed out, because one of the things is that I've struggled with anxiety for a number of years from the time that I was little. But I've been able to manage my anxiety by using different techniques, by using different ways, and haven't had to be medicated in over 4 years. And that is important to me. And not that it's a bad thing for people that have to be on medication and that need to be on the medication. But like for me, it was, I don't like the side effects of medication. And even with the injured leg, it's very little medication that I take, even for pain. Like I use the essential oils, and I use different vitamins that that the nutritionist had suggested that I take. And so like I've got all these different things and strategies that I've put in place that unless I'm really, really in pain, then at that point I will take the pharmaceutical medication. But otherwise, that's how I've done my healing with the journey that I've been on, because it is so important to me to be able to allow my body to be able to do things naturally and to get back into that healthy mind, body, heart, and soul of living.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. You reminded me of a story. When I was a teenager, I was 16, and I was a teenage runaway. I ran away from home and got myself out of an unhealthy situation, found myself being chased by the cops and, had to go to blah, 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 do the whole thing, and ended up in therapy, thank God. And I remember the therapist saying, first thing being like, well, you're depressed, so I can prescribe you antidepressants. And I remember the feeling went through my body of like, ooh, like something doesn't feel right about that. I'm 16 years old. And I remember saying to her, can you give me some time? I really think that my depression is situational. I think there's a reason that I'm depressed, and I would really like the opportunity to be able to work through that. And if I can't, if we give it, 6 months and I'm still like not in a good place, I'm open to that. But can we give it some time? And then looking back, I'm so grateful for that wisdom, as a young person to have that, because there's a reason that, firstly, we all experience anxiety, and some of us deal with it differently, and some of us feel it more intensely, but we're human, and we're all humans just trying to human better, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's a hard experience. But there's a reason that we feel the things that we feel. Our bodies and our mind are telling us something. There's wisdom through the somatic expressions that we experience. If we feel jittery in our hands, what are we feeling? Why? What is that? What is that telling us? What wisdom is coming through us? What do we need to shift? What do we need to look at? What do we maybe need to express?
And I love that, right? So, and it really is about that expression and being able to have that opportunity to be able to figure out what it is that we're going through. And each person is going to have their own wisdom that they're bringing with them. Each person, but over the years, a lot of us have been stunted to believe that our opinions don't matter, right? So even as little children, and I see that even with the kids that are in my life, and it's like allowing them to be able to have that opportunity to speak, right? So stay quiet so that they can have that conversation that they need to have. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you, but listen to what it is that they're trying to say, because maybe it does make sense for them. And maybe there is something that can be done. Unless it's a safety issue, then why not let them explore? Why not let them try whatever it is that they need to do or try or explore?
Right.
And so
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because, in my book, I address eating disorders, because I really do feel like we have somewhat of a cultural wide eating disorder. We have a very dysfunctional relationship with food as a culture right now. And most people that I know, male and female, have had some sort of disordered eating in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it didn't make sense to me to address, a lot of what I do is help people with food and diet. And it only goes so far to tell somebody, eat this and don't eat this, unless you address the relationship with food first and the relationship with the body, right? So that's why I wrote my book, is to help start to bring that to the table as a conversation. And one of the things that I often find when it comes to food and one's relationship with food is that the suppression of one's voice has a lot to do with the way that they relate to food. Specifically with things like binge eating, emotional eating, bulimia, things like that. It's interesting, the same orifice that we use to speak and express, we also use to consume food. To nourish ourselves. And it's a common thing, an unconscious habit, to actually suppress your voice through putting food in your mouth. And so when I work with people with food and eating disorders and things like that, that's one of the things that I will often work with is, okay, what is actually expression that has been suppressed or repressed, or there's fear around, and how do we work with that simultaneously?
And it really truly is something that is huge. And so there's the TikTok viral person who wrote a song on, and and you've probably seen it or heard it about the Victoria's Secret, right? And so like she's hit the charts, and it's all about the fact that like it's body image and the way that we see things, and watching what it is that we're eating. And at one point she actually talks about having a carbless summer or something like that, right? So it's like, it's how do we nourish that? But if we don't have that education, if we don't know what it is that's there, and so being able to share what it is that we do know for our younger generation is really important. So, but it all starts with ourselves. So we need to start with, what changes do we need to make? And I love the fact that that was one of the things that you had said earlier on, is that you knew that you needed to heal yourself before that you can actually help to heal others. And so, I love that you had this wisdom that allows you to be able to come forward and share this, this knowledge with all of us.
Yeah, you bring up the young people and body image. And one of the things that I witness a lot, and it just is such a bummer, is that we basically teach young girls especially to suck their stomachs in. And what's interesting and horrible, but kind of ironic about it, is that when you suck your belly in to try to look thin, you contract your diaphragm and you shorten and inhibit your breath. And that automatically puts you in a stress response. And then you live your life in a stress response. And so anxiety is increased, your digestive capacity is decreased, your social cues are changed, your ability to connect and receive is changed. So there's this like whole physiological thing that happens literally just from sucking your stomach in to make yourself look thin. And so, as simple as it is, teaching people and reteaching ourselves how to breathe is one of the most powerful things that we can do to affect anxiety, for one, among a host of other things. And so you just reminded me of that when thinking about young people, because I grew up as a dancer, and I remember a couple years ago going to a ballet class and watching a ballet class of young people, of teenagers, and they were taught, hold it in, suck your stomach in. And I was sitting there thinking like, oh no, we're setting them up for a lifetime of like chronic health issues. No.
And it's funny how when we come to realize some of those things, that it makes a huge, huge difference as to how something so simple. And that's one of the things that I always remind people, is that because I use breath work a lot for helping my clients deal with anxiety. So it's always like, focus on your breath, because your breath is something that you bring with you no matter where you go. Right? It doesn't matter. You don't need a yoga mat. You don't need a whatever. Like you've got your breath, and it's always present. It's always with you. And it's always something that you can take no matter where it is that you go. And so when you're talking about shortening the breath, it was like, it's always where, and when I start a meditation, when I'm guiding a meditation, it's always, where is your breath? Is it up in your upper chest? Is it down into your diaphragm? Is it down into your belly? Like, where is the breath? So that it can always we always start by bringing awareness to, where is it right now in this moment? So that when they do need to use that tool, it's something that's readily accessible, that they know that it's like, okay, my breath, it's way up here, so it's really shallow. I need to get some breath back down into my belly and make that belly not suck in, push it way out, so that that breath is like really big, and fill up that diaphragm as best as we can. So thanks for that reminder.
It's one of the most important and effective medicines, changing your breath. I'm so glad that you're doing that and helping people with that.
And it really does make a huge difference. And so one of the things that, so as we kind of wrap up, is there anything else that you wanted to share, or that you thought was important for us to know on today's episode?
Um, I guess what I would like to leave you with and listeners with is that you can't truly care for or show up for other people until you do to yourself. And that everything that you intake, that you let into your life and you let into your senses is food. What you eat, what you breathe, what you drink, what you perceive, it's all food. And so your diet is everywhere around you. And what you take in can either be medicine or it can be a toxin. And so all of that is choice. And all of that is there. There's everything around you can use to nourish yourself and to care for yourself. And that really is important. It's not selfish.
And I love how you talk about that, because one of the things in our practice is that a grandmother had a teaching for us at the one point, and she said, it's always like, if you're in the kitchen, it's always with love. Like, you do not say anything negative. If you have to say something that's not positive, then you leave the kitchen. And then before you come back, you wash and cleanse. Because, so like, if you needed to scold one of the children or whatever it is that you needed to do, you don't do it around the food, because whatever energy that you're putting into that food is what people are digesting. And so it's always made with love. And so it always allows things to happen. And I met a lady a couple of years ago, or I guess it was about a year ago now. And one of the things that she said is that she would follow her grandmother's recipe to a T, and she'd say to her grandmother, I don't know what's different. There's like a different taste to it. Like, there's something missing in whatever this was. And it was her favorite meal. I don't know if it was a soup or whatever. And her grandmother said, but I always make it with love. And so it was like, oh, beautiful. So I love how you've brought these two contexts into like that important part of whatever it is that we're doing. We need to be ingesting, and we ingest it all. We ingest the people, we ingest the environment, we ingest whatever it is that we have going on around us. And so when things are not copacetic, then it makes a huge difference as to how we're going to be able to live our lives. So I think that that's really important as well. And it goes back to being true to you, which is one of the pillars that you were talking about, right? So thank you for that. And so I added the link for your book. So for anybody who is listening, the link for the book is there. And for those of you who want to be able to connect with Madison, here is the link for you to be able to connect with her and schedule an appointment to see her. So, or I'm assuming see her as in Zoom. Do you do in person as well?
I do in person and Zoom.
Perfect. So for those of you who are local to Madison, which is where, Madison?
Currently, I'm in Austin, Texas, but I'm actually in the process of relocating to Golden, Colorado next month.
Okay. So for those of you who are in the vicinity, if you want to reach out to Madison in person, and looking forward to connecting with you again further. And thanks so much for joining. And thanks again for accommodating the change. And for those of you who are listening to Chatting with Wisdom, I will see you on Wednesday.
Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.